Hello and welcome to another Straight Talk Short. In this one we're going to be talking one of the, I would like to say, more contentious issues of this crazy political season we have so far, and that's the minimum wage in the economy. So the economy, it's had its ups and downs. There was a statistic that came out and said that President Obama is the first president since, I believe it was Herbert Hoover, to have an economic season in a term without 3% GDP growth. Now, Hoover had one term. Obama had two. And most of these economic arguments, most of the time they circle back to the area of the minimum wage. Now, the minimum wage is contentious in that there's so many different arguments flying around at once. There's the pro-minimum wage side that says that they do want to see some sort of bare minimum, a living wage, if you will, to help provide for people who don't have enough on their own. They say that this is the right thing to do, that it's moral, and that in some cases it will create jobs because because the price of labor will be set at a point where people can go in and it's more accessible, and also it will raise the median income of income earners, obviously. Mm-hmm. Now, the con side believes that if you artificially inject a price of labor into the labor system, that this actually depresses the job growth, and that companies will be less I would like to say inspired to go out and hire people, such as a case in a Wendy's where they replaced cashiers with service kiosks because they said that they had to make a judgment call between paying their workers more and pricing their services at higher rates. So with that said, we're going to send it over to JP. What do you think?
So, I think, like a lot of policies that are proposed in elections in the political spectrum, on paper, saying, nobody can make less than $15 an hour. That sounds wonderful. But if you'll dive into the details a little bit more, it's a little bit, at least from my perspective, and I think from a lot of people's perspectives, it's a little bit less intriguing. The beauty of the free market and the beauty of a capitalist system is that it will correct itself in the long run. And that has been a discussion for many years that we as a society have had to struggle with, is the idea of long-term versus short-term solutions. And when you talk about the minimum wage, I'm not going to say, flat out we shouldn't have any minimum wage, because there are bad apples out there that would pay people dirt and it wouldn't be illegal. I don't have the statistics in front of me. I don't think the federal minimum wage right now is $7.25. I don't think that has necessarily kept up with inflation. I could be wrong. It seems a little low. But I don't think that's to say that we should go to you hear the fight for 15 all the time, and even Hillary Clinton's proposing $12 an hour. The beauty of the market is that it's going to keep up with the idea of competition. If you have two businesses and you've got one business that's paying people $6 an hour and one business that's paying people $8 an hour, if you've got talented people that are working for that $6 an hour at that one company, if they can get their services elsewhere, if they can get paid for their services at a better rate elsewhere, that other business is going to have to raise their pay grade if they want to keep up in the competitive market. So the idea of competition is what thrives in a capitalist society, in a capitalist system. So I think, and I'd like to think that, just in the long run overall, the market itself will determine what the minimum wage is, and businesses are going to have to pay people more if they want to remain competitive. And to your point about saying, well, then a higher minimum wage is going to have to, they replace them with service kiosks at Wendy's. Not even on a corporate level. If you go to the small businesses, there are many people who just couldn't afford an increase in the minimum wage, and they would have to. The amount of people that would lose their jobs with a $15 minimum wage, that's like almost 100%, more than 100% increase in the minimum wage. There's a lot of people that would be out of work. And you have to, and that's a concept that people are going to have to stomach if they truly want that $15 minimum wage. You can have it, but you're going to be spending a lot of money on the welfare state to make sure that these people losing their jobs are going to be able to provide for themselves. And that's the argument: is you can't live off of $7.25. But these $7.25 an hour jobs, they were never meant to support a family. They were meant for people like you and I who are in high school looking to earn a few bucks, maybe go out to dinner on Friday night, or save up for college. So the idea of increasing it to 15 in and of itself, I disagree with. I just think that I think it's better off left to the market to correct itself than to prioritize setting a federal minimum wage in Congress. There's far greater issues that the Congress could deal with than setting something that I think the market will do on its own.
I do agree with raising the federal minimum wage. I think $7.25 is, like you said, you can't live off that, and some families are trying to. I mean, I have friends who make that much, and they won't even go out to dinner. Like you said, on Fridays, they won't go out to dinner because they're trying to save their money, and I'm trying to picture, like, that's someone working, and he has a wife and 2 kids. How are they supposed to live off that? They just can't. And in regards to trying to let, like, the market solve it, I feel that some companies don't have the level of competition that you're trying to show. Like, I'm talking big businesses, not like 2 small bakeries on LaGrange Road, but like Walmart or massive companies like that, where if they don't really have this minimum wage problem that they need to raise it, they're going to keep it at that level to try to keep profits high, and they're not going to increase the pay of their workers if they don't have to. So that's why I feel like perhaps I do like that Illinois is at $8.25, but federally at $7.25. I think even though Congress does have bigger problems to worry about, it would be nice to see them at least discuss it, because there isn't much. I think the fight for 15 is ridiculous. I mean, that's a lot for businesses to try to suddenly jump up to, and small businesses would not be able to keep up with that if they suddenly need to raise every single person on their payroll, $8 even. That's just absurd. But I do think that perhaps looking at inflation rates and trying to raise it to what it's supposed to be instead of just kind of keep it at $7.25 and not letting it grow what it's supposed to be would be nice to see people being able to live off the minimum wage, and not just high schoolers like us just trying to make a few bucks, when we have an hour free, but families who actually do need to try to support their family off it.
But I mean, even to your point with Walmart, I think Walmart's a good example, because recently they said that they're going to be increasing for all their workers, the lowest wage, I can't remember what it was, I think it was around $10 an hour. The lowest wage that anybody in the corporation will be making is $10. Even if you don't have that level of competition, there's still the idea of productivity, and if you're getting paid more money, you're going to be more productive. If you're making $7.25 an hour, you're going to say, well, I'm going to get paid this regardless, why work hard? If I have the opportunity to get a raise, then I'm going to work harder, be more successful, and companies are going to make more profit off of that, and their products are going to be, granted with Walmart, you're not really producing anything, you're more just selling it, but the same is true in that even if you don't have that level of competition, the happiness of your workforce goes a long ways in saying that, if your workers are happier, they're going to be more productive, and if they're more productive, you're going to have more output, you're going to make more money. So just the generosity of people, counting on the generosity of people to pay money, I think it shouldn't be based on that, but I think people are genuinely good when it comes down to it, and I don't think if you're a business person, if you're a CEO, and you're genuinely convinced that the worth of your labor is $5 an hour, there's something wrong there. But I'd like to think that the vast majority of corporations don't believe that and would truly pay their workforce what they deserve.
Yeah, but I think a problem with, like you said, trying to rely on the generosity of CEOs and corporations to try to keep the pay high, to keep motivation is, let's say the economy has a downturn and they really need to get some profit, they would totally just skimp it down back to $7.25 when people have been living at a nice cozy even $13 in some cases, if they've been raising it. So I think while we could let the market try to handle it, we also need to work federally to try to raise it up to that level so that if things do take a downturn, you can still try to support those workers.
And I think to your point about raising it up, that goes hand in hand with the welfare discussion, and that you have Paul Ryan, who has recently put out his A Better Way platform, and that's what he's trying to propose for the next congressional session. Not rolling it out while there's a President Obama, because he said, in a lot of the Republican leadership is that a lot of what we're proposing we've already tried, and he's not going to agree to it. So his idea, and what I very much support, is that the Republican Party has, and I think just Congress as a whole has kind of shied away from the issue of poverty. And a lot of the Republican, stereotype is the rich white men, and it's not really a topic that is at the forefront of the Republican discussion. And I think it should be, because, and this is exactly what Paul Ryan is trying to do, is say we want a government that that you don't rely upon. If you lose your job and you're struggling and you're going out to find another one, then you absolutely should get some assistance. And basically what my perspective is rather than it being a safety net that can catch you, it should be like a trampoline, is that you can fall down, but it's going to bounce you right back up. It's not going to be like something that incentivizes people to stay on it for years and years. And I'm not, incredibly familiar with the ins and outs and every nuance of our system, but I think you have these perspectives. One of my friends told me a story and saying that his dad owns a trucking company, and he had a person come in for an interview. And leaving, he offered them the job and said, well, I'm making this much on welfare right now, so I think I'm going to pass on the job. And granted, that's probably a very small percentage of the people that are on welfare, but to even have one person have that be the situation says something, in that right now what we have is not incentivizing looking for work. And if we get it to a point where we can revise it and make it so that, if you're going out and actively trying to get another job, you're going to continue to get benefits. It's a very complex issue, but I think at the bottom line is that we need to be raising people out of poverty, as opposed to saying, you're out of a job, here's X amount of dollars a month, and you don't even have to go out and look for a job.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you, JP. We're going to give Charlie the last word.
Okay. I do like the idea of, instead of a net that you could perhaps lay down on, is a trampoline to bounce you back up. But I do kind of hate the stereotype of, if you're out of work and you're on welfare, even though that was a very good personal story, is that they're lazy, they're not actually trying to find work.
That's a minority.
Yeah, no. So what I think would be better is perhaps finding a better way to define looking for work, a better way to actually propose that you are trying to do something, instead of, like, in my consumer economics class, we talked about some people just look online for a job, like they apply online and stuff, and then that qualifies as looking for work.
It's like the labor force participation rate as opposed to the unemployment
rate.
rate.
Exactly, is that it's vastly different depending on where you look. And I think that if there is a better way to find if someone is looking for work and they are actively trying to, then continue to them to try to find work, instead of just letting people kind of lay down on the safety net. So, I think perhaps we could solve this issue quite efficiently, is if you do find a way to kind of seek out those who are finding work and those who are simply just kind of laying down.
Gaming the system.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, JP. Thank you, Charlie. We now will return you back to your scheduled election coverage. Thank you for joining us.